On the day that Jesus was arrested and hung on the cross, he faced several trials to determine if he was guilty of any crime. The first of which were held by the Jewish religious leaders, and the second of which were held by the Roman Empire. After Jesus was tried by the Jewish religious leaders, they handed him over to the Roman Empire and Pilate to be crucified. It was a tradition to release a prisoner during this time in Rome to the people, and Pilate asked to the crowd that gathered whom they wanted to be released: Jesus, the King of the Jews, or Barabbas, a murderer. The crowd exclaimed, "Give us Barabbas! Give us Barabbas!" Then Pilate asked, "What shall I do with Jesus, who is called Christ?" The crowd exclaimed, "Crucify him!" Pilate was confused and asked the crowd why. What crime has he committed? But the crowd shouted all the louder, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate did not want to convict and kill an innocent man, so he took a bowl of water and washed his hands in front of the crowd and said, "I am innocent of this man's blood." And then he turned him over to the crowd to be crucified. While Jesus was in the custody of the Roman soldiers, they began to beat him. They stripped him of his clothes and put a purple robe on him and twisted some thorns into a crown and placed it on his head. They mocked him, kneeling before him, shouting, "Hail the King of the Jews!" After they were done mocking him, they beat him again and took him away to be crucified. While all of this was happening, while Jesus was being beaten, spat on, and mocked, he only had one thing on his mind: you. During this whole ordeal, Jesus only had one thing on his mind, and that was you. When Jesus was being beaten, he was thinking of you. While Jesus was being spat on, he was thinking of you. When he was being mocked, he was thinking of you. When he was being nailed to the cross, he was thinking of you. And right before he died, he was thinking of you. Everything he did it for you. You have to understand, the reason why Christ died on the cross was so you could spend eternity with him. God is so holy, so perfect, that anything that is less than perfect cannot exist with him. But Jesus took the penalty of our sin, so that when we choose to follow him, we can be seen as perfect by God. Jesus lived a sinless life and sacrificed himself on the cross to pay for our sins. Before you is some pieces of paper, pens, nails, a hammer, and a cross. I want you to take a moment and think about your life. What are some of the sins in your life that still haunt you? What are some of the things you did but wish you didn't? Take a piece of paper and write your sin on it. Now ask God to forgive you. Just ask. Just ask God to forgive you. He will. After you have done this, take a hammer and a nail and nail your sin to the cross. If you have any other sins you want to nail to the cross, you may. Do not feel bad about your sin, but be glad that you are forgiven. Rejoice in God and the grace that he has extended to you. Following Jesus has nothing to do with what you have done, but it has everything to do with what Christ has done. After you are done, go to the cafe and quietly sit and wait for everyone to finish the labyrinth.